It never starts with a scream. It starts with the sound of heavy paper sliding across mahogany. October in Portland, Maine. The private dining room of the Coastal Country Club smells like roasted garlic and expensive floor wax. I sit across from my parents wearing a navy blazer pulled over a gray t-shirt. If you look closely at my cuffs, you can still see the faint white smudge of drywall dust from this morning. I am 28 years old. I restore abandoned historic properties. I buy the buildings everyone else gave up on, the ones with sagging roof lines and rotting floorboards, and I put them back together. Right now, I need earnest money to secure a derelict multifamily property that will define my career. I do not need cash. I just need a signature. A $75,000 cosign on a bridge loan. I look at my father, Richard. He holds a silver pen. He does not look at my business plan. He does not look at the structural survey I spent 3 weeks compiling. Instead, he caps the pen, looks past my shoulder, and slides a folded bank check across the table. He does not slide it to me. The check stops in front of my sister. Jessica is 31. She is a luxury event planner whose entire existence is curated for an audience of strangers. Her nails are perfectly manicured. She unfolds the paper. I can read the numbers printed in bold black ink from where I sit. $150,000. Happy wedding day, Jess, my father says. Tuscany is going to be beautiful. The bridge loan I asked for requires zero out-of-pocket cash from them. The check, sitting in front of my sister, is a direct, unearned gift. I turn my head and look at my mother, Susan. She holds a glass of Pinot Noir. Her gaze drops to my hands. She takes in the calluses, the short fingernails, the faint scars from a rogue nail gun. She takes a slow sip of her wine, sets the crystal glass down, and delivers the sentence that permanently alters the geography of our family. We invest in success, Roxana. She keeps her voice low, the volume you use when speaking to the hired help. Your sister is building a brand. You play in the dirt. You do not deserve any help. Welcome to Olivia Stories Revenge. If you have ever been the scapegoat sitting across a table from the golden child, you already know the exact coldness spreading through my chest right now. Drop a comment below, tell me your age, and let me know if you have ever had to walk away from the people who were supposed to protect you. Hit subscribe, because the way this ends is something my mother still cannot comprehend. I do not throw my water glass. I do not beg. I do not point out that Jessica's last 3 event planning ventures operated at a net loss. I sit in my chair and perform a silent calculation. I measure the cost of my pride against the cost of this relationship. The account is bankrupt. I stand up. I push my chair in. The metal legs scrape against the hardwood floor. It is the only loud noise in the room. I leave my untouched steak on the pristine white plate. I walk out of the dining room, past the valet stand, and into the freezing Maine night. The wind hits my face, carrying the smell of salt and diesel exhaust. I pull my phone from my pocket. I do not call a friend. I open my settings. I change my number. I delete every trace of my digital footprint. I vanish into the winter. The silence that follows is not peaceful. It is the kind of quiet that requires you to work until your hands bleed just to drown out the memory of your mother's voice. The silence that follows a severed bloodline is not empty. It has a texture. It feels like the air inside a walk-in freezer biting and still. When you block your parents' numbers and erase your digital footprint, society tells you that you will feel liberated. Society lies. The first few months feel like holding your breath underwater. You keep waiting for the panic to set in, but if you stay submerged long enough, your lungs adapt. You learn to breathe the water. I learned to breathe the dirt. My new reality begins inside a 28-foot unheated Airstream trailer parked behind a lumber yard. The aluminum walls offer zero insulation against the Maine winter. When I wake up at 4 a.m, I can see my breath hanging in the dark cabin. Frost coats the inside of the windows. I sleep in a thermal sleeping bag wearing 2 layers of wool. Breakfast is instant coffee and a bowl of oatmeal heated over a portable propane camp stove. I do not go to restaurants. I do not buy new clothes. Every single dollar I possess is diverted into a solitary purpose: survival through acquisition. My mother mocked my profession at that country club table. She equated manual labor with failure. She viewed success through the lens of optics designer labels, pristine manicures, and destination weddings. I view success through the lens of load-bearing timber. During this era, I carry a physical totem in my jacket pocket. It is a vintage brass plumb bob. It weighs exactly 14 ounces. It consists of a solid machined brass cone tapering to a sharp steel point suspended by a braided nylon string. In historic restoration, you hold the string against a ceiling plate and let the brass weight drop toward the floor. Gravity dictates the truth. The string creates a perfect vertical line. It tells you instantly if a structural wall is straight or if it is leaning. There is no middle ground, no room for negotiation. A wall is either true or it is failing. My parents spent 3 decades pretending a leaning wall was straight just because they hung expensive wallpaper over the cracks. They handed my sister a small fortune to fund an illusion. I grip the cold brass in my pocket whenever the memory of that night threatens to break my focus. The metal grounds me. It reminds me that foundations must be earned, not inherited. I incorporate my business, Coastal Heritage Holdings. The name is intentional. It sounds old, established, and entirely faceless. It provides perfect corporate armor. Nobody in the local municipal offices associates the LLC with the 28-year-old woman in steel-toed boots who hauls debris to the county dump. I buy my first solo project at a municipal tax auction. It is a rotting Victorian in Bath. The roof is actively caving in. The front porch leans at a 15-degree angle. For 3 weeks, I wear a heavy-duty respirator, ripping out water-damaged drywall and black mold. I tear my hands open on rusted nails. I sleep in the freezing trailer, wake up, and return to the dust. Dirt is honest. Dirt does not lie to you over a glass of Pinot Noir. I finished the Victorian in 7 months. I list it on a Thursday. It sells over asking price by Monday afternoon. I take the profit, pay the capital gains, and funnel the remainder directly into a dual property lot in Kennebunkport. The physical toll is heavy. My shoulders ache permanently. Calluses harden across my palms, forming thick ridges. I spend Thanksgiving of year 2 sitting on an overturned paint bucket in a gutted kitchen, eating a cold turkey sandwich from a gas station. I do not cry. I chew the dry bread, stare at the freshly framed stud walls, and calculate my projected return on investment. The emotional detachment required to succeed in this business is clinical. You cannot fall in love with the houses, and you cannot mourn the people who refused to believe in you. You just swing the hammer. The Kennebunkport properties close simultaneously. I am sitting in the cab of my truck when the wire transfers clear. I open my banking application on my phone. The screen loads. My business checking account registers a 7-figure balance, $1,400,000 in liquid capital. I stare at the digits. My heart rate does not spike. I do not celebrate. I trace the brass plumb bob with my thumb. The number on the screen is not a trophy. It is leverage. Year 3 of the silence arrives. I am ready to transition from residential flips to legacy assets. I find the target on a jagged peninsula in Cape Elizabeth. It is known locally as the Cliff House, a sprawling 1880s sea captain's estate sitting on 2 acres of prime oceanfront property. The salt air has decimated the exterior cedar shingles. The Widow's Walk is missing floorboards. The interior is a museum of neglect trapped in a decade of deferred maintenance. The asking price is $2 million. I walk the perimeter of the estate alone. The Atlantic Ocean crashes against the granite boulders 50 yards from the back patio. The sheer scale of the property would terrify most developers. I only see the underlying geometry. The foundation is solid Maine granite. The bones are true. I structure the financing utilizing a heavy cash down payment paired with a commercial portfolio loan through Coastal Heritage Holdings. The closing takes place on a Tuesday morning in late November. The conference room at my attorney's office smells like lemon polish and old paper. My lawyer David sits across from me, pushing stacks of legal documents across the polished oak table. I sign my name 42 times. The ink flows smooth and black. With every signature, I bury the ghost of the girl who begged for a bridge loan. We finished the residential packet. David reaches into his leather briefcase and pulls out a secondary binder. To hedge the risk of the Cape Elizabeth restoration, I directed David to purchase a commercial asset in downtown Portland. It is a stabilized brick and beam retail building designed to generate passive monthly income. It is the kind of boring, reliable real estate that wealthy people use to anchor their portfolios. Here is the transition packet for the downtown commercial property, David says, sliding the heavy binder toward me. The title is clear. The escrow funds have been dispersed to the seller. You are officially the owner on record. I open the leather-bound folder. The pages are crisp. I bypass the land survey and the municipal tax records. I flip directly to the active tenant ledger to review the current rent rolls. I need to know the exact cash flow metrics for the upcoming quarter. I trace my index finger down the list of active commercial leases. Row 1, a boutique coffee roaster, rent paid on time. Row 2, Suite 200. My finger stops. The skin on the back of my neck prickles. A sudden involuntary reaction to the data printed on the page. The business name listed in the ledger is Elevate Event PR. I stare at the black ink. I know that name. I know the branding. I know the woman who filed the articles of incorporation for that specific agency. It was funded by a $150,000 check written in a country club dining room. I look at the guarantor's signature line on the lease agreement. The name is printed in neat, looping cursive. Jessica Gray, my sister. I sit in the quiet conference room, listening to the faint hum of the heating vent. I do not gasp. I do not alert my attorney. I close the binder slowly, the leather cover making a soft thud against the table. I reach into my pocket and wrap my fingers around the cold brass of my plumb bob. I just bought the building that houses my sister's company. The golden child, the luxury event planner who looked down on the dirt on my hands, now operates her entire facade inside a structure owned by my LLC. I am her landlord. Power in the modern world does not look like a crown. It looks like a registered agent filing. It looks like a Delaware holding company nested inside a Maine limited liability corporation. It looks like a digital dashboard glowing on dual monitors in a home office overlooking the Atlantic. We are now deep into year 3 of the silence. My daily routine is a masterclass in operational detachment. I wake at dawn. I review the overnight ledger updates. Coastal Heritage Holdings is no longer a scrappy flip operation. I have built a stabilized portfolio of high-yield assets. The residential units, the commercial downtown spaces, the boutique short-term rentals. Every first of the month, those properties generate $85,000 in passive revenue. The capital flows into my corporate accounts while I drink black coffee. My name exists nowhere on the public-facing documents. If anyone searches the property records, they find the LLC. If they search the LLC, they find a corporate law firm in Augusta. To my parents and my sister, I am still the stubborn disappointment who walked away from the country club. In the narrative they sell to their friends, I am likely living in a damp basement, swinging a hammer for hourly wages, too ashamed to admit I failed. I let them keep their story. Delusion is a cheap narcotic, and they are addicted to the dose. I focus my attention on Suite 200. The commercial building in downtown Portland features exposed brick, original tin ceilings, and floor-to-ceiling arched windows. It is prime real estate. I purchased the structure 6 months ago. Since that closing date, I have functioned as the ghost landlord. My property manager, a rigid professional named Marcus, handles all tenant communications. I gave Marcus one explicit directive regarding the tenant in Suite 200. Follow the lease agreement to the letter. No favors, no informal extensions, just the contract. Jessica does not know she is renting from me. She assumes Coastal Heritage Holdings is a faceless, out-of-state conglomerate. She views Marcus as a frustrating, bureaucratic hurdle. Through my digital dashboard, I watch my sister's financial foundation crack. The structural failure of her life did not happen overnight. It started shortly after the Tuscany destination wedding. That $150,000 spectacle bought her imported orchids, a designer gown, and hundreds of curated photographs. It bought an illusion. The marriage itself lasted exactly 14 months. I did not need to break my no-contact rule to learn this. Public divorce filings are digitized. The split was messy, expensive, and driven by hidden debt. Without a spouse to subsidize her overhead, Jessica is sinking under the weight of her own brand. Her luxury PR firm requires a certain aesthetic. She needs the downtown address. She needs the espresso machine in the lobby. She needs the optics of success to attract clients who only care about optics. But the ledger tells the empirical truth. I sit at my desk in the Cliff House and track the decay. The software color codes the rent roll. Green indicates a timely deposit. Yellow marks a late fee. Red signifies delinquency. 3 months ago, Suite 200 turned yellow. She paid the rent 12 days late, incurring a 5% penalty. 2 months ago, the cell turned a pale red. She submitted a partial payment, 50% of the required base rent, promising Marcus the remainder would arrive by wire transfer the following week. The wire never materialized. This month, the cell is a glaring, vibrant red, $0 deposited. She is now 3 months in arrears. The arithmetic is brutal and undeniable. She is drowning. The golden child, the woman who scoffed at my calloused hands, cannot afford the roof over her designer desk. I do not feel a rush of vindication. I feel the calm, cold satisfaction of a mathematician watching a proof resolve. Gravity always wins. You can prop up a leaning wall with country club checks for a few years, but eventually, the weight of the structure snaps the timber. The tension shifts from passive observation to active engagement on a rainy Wednesday. I am standing in the kitchen of the Cliff House, running my hand along a slab of newly installed soapstone. The rain hits the coastal windows in sharp, erratic bursts. My phone buzzes in my pocket. It is an encrypted email notification from Marcus. The subject line reads, Suite 200, Tenant Correspondence. I tap the screen to open the thread. Marcus has forwarded an email directly from Jessica. I read her words. The tone is frantic, masked by a thin veneer of corporate jargon. She addresses the property management team, citing temporary cash flow friction due to a banking error. It is a textbook stall tactic. Then she deploys her primary weapon. She lies. Jessica claims she just secured a lucrative international account. She promises this new client will generate a significant retainer by the end of the quarter. She is begging Marcus for a rent reduction and a 90-day grace period on the arrears, leveraging a phantom contract to buy time. She writes, Our agency is on the verge of a major expansion. We value our tenancy in this historic building and ask for a brief partnership accommodation during this transition. I read the word partnership, and a dry laugh catches in my throat. She does not want a partner. She wants a savior. She wants the same unearned grace our father handed her across the dinner table 3 years ago. But Richard is not the landlord here. I am. I hit reply to Marcus. My instructions are concise. Deny the reduction. Issue a formal warning for the arrears. Initiate the preliminary default protocol per Section 4 of her commercial lease. I lock the screen and slide the phone back into my pocket. The rain continues to lash against the glass. Jessica thinks her biggest problem is a strict property manager and a temporary lack of funds. She does not realize she is trapped in a maze designed by the sister she discarded. The pressure is building inside her carefully curated world. When a pipe is overpressurized, it eventually finds the weakest point and bursts. I know the explosion is imminent. I just do not know the exact minute it will happen. I return to my architectural drawings, trusting the legal process to handle Suite 200. I expect the drama to remain confined to the ledgers and the email threads. I expect her to keep fighting Marcus from behind her computer screen. But desperation alters behavior. When the digital stall tactics fail, people leave their screens and take desperate measures. They seek out real-world validation. They drive out of their way to find something or someone to project their anxiety onto. The following Tuesday, the sterile boundary between my corporate ledger and my physical reality shatters. I am outside, breathing the salt air, holding a rolled set of blueprints, unaware that a white luxury SUV is navigating the winding coastal road, heading directly toward my iron gates. A Tuesday afternoon on the Maine coast brings a sharp, biting wind off the Atlantic. I stand on the second-story balcony of the Cliff House, the collar of my heavy canvas jacket turned up against the chill. My feet are planted in scuffed, steel-toed boots. In my right hand, I hold a thick roll of architectural blueprints. Below me, the estate is a symphony of controlled chaos. A crew of 12 landscapers navigates the sweeping front lawn, operating heavy machinery and moving earth. They are installing mature Japanese maples and laying a complex hardscape of hand-cut granite. The scope of the project reflects the $2 million valuation of the property. Above my head, the newly installed roof features imported black slate and custom copper flashing that catches the pale autumn sunlight. I lean against the restored wrought iron railing, surveying the geometry of the driveway, calculating the hours remaining before the crew loses daylight. Then I hear the distinct hum of a high-performance engine over the rumble of the excavators. A white luxury SUV decelerates on the winding coastal road. It rolls past the property line, applies the brakes, and comes to a smooth idle directly outside my primary gates. It is a late-model Range Rover. The vehicle gleams spotless against the rugged coastal backdrop. I know that car. I know the monthly lease payment required to drive it. I know the woman sitting behind the steering wheel, Jessica. Her presence here is not a coincidence, but it is also not a targeted visit. People who are drowning in debt often engage in physical escapism. Her public relations agency is failing. She is facing a mountain of unpaid vendor invoices and a property manager demanding thousands of dollars in back rent for Suite 200. Instead of sitting in her downtown office facing the ledger, she is taking a scenic drive along the wealthiest stretch of the Cape. She is self-soothing by driving through neighborhoods she wishes she belonged to, projecting a lifestyle she can no longer afford. The tinted driver's side window glides down. Jessica leans forward. I watch her from my elevated vantage point. She is wearing oversized designer sunglasses and a cream-colored cashmere sweater. She does not see me yet. Her attention is captivated by the sheer magnitude of the estate. She scans the manicured lawns, the precision of the granite driveway, and the towering stone chimney. She is cataloging the wealth, taking inventory of the slate and the copper. Slowly, her gaze travels upward, following the grand columns of the facade until she reaches the second-story balcony. Her head stops moving. I am standing dead center, holding the blueprints, looking straight down at her. Jessica pulls her sunglasses down the bridge of her nose. Even from 50 feet away, I can see her jaw slacken, her mouth parts. I do not wave. I do not call out her name. I do not step back into the shadows to hide. I grip the iron railing and stand perfectly still. The psychological collision happening inside her vehicle is almost palpable. I let the visual mathematics of my current reality crush her long-held assumptions. For 3 years, her brain has categorized me as the family disappointment, the girl who played in the dirt, the sister who wore cheap clothes and begged for a bridge loan. Now her eyes are forcing her to process contradictory data. The sister she discarded is standing on the balcony of a multi-million-dollar fortress, flanked by a dozen workers who take her orders. She cannot reconcile the image. Her mind begins to frantically build alternative narratives to protect her fragile ego. She assumes I am part of the hired help, a project manager, a painter, or worse in her eyes, she assumes I am sleeping with a wealthy older man, leveraging a relationship to access a world I could never earn on my own. Jessica drops her sunglasses into her lap. Her hands begin to tremble. She reaches toward the passenger seat and grabs her phone. I watch her thumbs move in rapid, erratic strikes across the screen. She presses the phone to her ear. Her shoulders hunch forward, her posture tight with sudden, frantic energy. She is dialing our mother. The golden child has encountered a glitch in the matrix, and she needs the matriarch to restore order. She needs Susan to confirm that I am still beneath them. Jessica speaks rapidly into the receiver, gesturing wildly toward the iron gates. She does not look up at me again. The cognitive dissonance is too painful. She throws the Range Rover into drive, hits the accelerator, and speeds away, leaving a faint cloud of exhaust lingering in the salty air. I watch the white vehicle disappear around the bend. My pulse remains steady. I unroll the blueprints, check the grading specifications for the retaining wall, and signal my foreman to shift the next pallet of stone. I finish my site walk. I do not let the ghost of my sister disrupt my schedule. 30 minutes later, I step inside the house and walk into my ground floor office. The room smells of fresh paint and polished mahogany. I set my boots by the door, walk to my desk, and tap the spacebar on my keyboard to wake the dual monitors. The digital wall I built 3 years ago was formidable, but no firewall is entirely impenetrable when a desperate woman is looking for a crack. An alert flashes in the corner of my screen. A new message has bypassed the generic filters on my corporate inbox. I click the notification. The sender name is Susan Gray. My mother did not have my new phone number. She did not know my home address. But she possessed the persistence of a predator whose hierarchy had been challenged. She tracked down an old high school acquaintance, someone who loosely followed the local real estate market, and managed to secure the generic contact email for my limited liability company. I open the message. The text consists of a single line. There is no greeting. There is no inquiry about my health or my well-being. There is only the immediate need to establish dominance. Roxana, your sister just saw you trespassing at a mansion in Cape Elizabeth. Whose house are you painting? I read the words twice. The tone is identical to the voice she used in the country club dining room. It drips with condescension. The inclusion of the word trespassing is a deliberate legal threat, a reminder that she views my very existence in a wealthy zip code as a criminal offense. She needs me to be the hired help. If I am the painter, her worldview remains intact. I do not type a reply. Engaging with a narcissist is equivalent to handing them a loaded weapon. Silence deprives them of ammunition. I drag the message to a designated folder on my hard drive and close the application. They think they hold the high ground. They believe a sharp email will put me back in my designated corner. Susan assumes she can still discipline me from afar, oblivious to the financial gravity pulling her entire family toward the earth. She is typing insults from a computer, sitting inside a house she is quietly losing, defending a daughter who is facing imminent ruin. The arithmetic of their downfall is already in motion. Jessica is running from a commercial eviction. She cannot afford her leased car, let alone her downtown office. Every passing hour pushes her closer to the deadline imposed by my property manager. My office remains quiet save for the rhythmic ticking of the brass clock on my desk. The drive-by discovery has accelerated the timeline. The physical boundary has been breached. The isolation of the past 3 years is officially over, and the conflict is entering a new phase. Susan and Jessica will not stop at a single email. They need to prove I am a failure, which means they will hunt me down to verify it in person. I welcome the escalation. I have spent 3 years fortifying my position, laying brick upon brick, securing the deeds and the ledgers. Let them come. Let them dig into my life. When you invite an inspection of a perfectly built fortress, the only thing the inspectors discover is how small they are standing outside the walls. The first email was merely a warning shot. The subsequent messages form a relentless barrage. Over the next 48 hours, my corporate inbox receives 7 new emails from Susan Gray. She treats my business address like a direct line to a disobedient child. I read them while sitting at my mahogany desk. The morning fog rolls off the Atlantic Ocean, obscuring the jagged granite rocks below the cliff house. The room is quiet, save for the rhythmic hum of the dehumidifier and the faint sound of the tide. I do not reply. I watch her psychological state degrade through her syntax. Her initial shock transforms into frantic indignation. She refuses to entertain the possibility of my ownership. In her mind, I am a trespasser or a low-level subcontractor hired to apply a fresh coat of paint. She cannot process the reality of my success, so she attempts to drag me back down to a level she can control. She types a new message. The font glares on my high-resolution monitor. If you are working on a property that large, you can afford to pay us back for the braces we bought you in high school. It is a textbook manipulation tactic. She is asserting dominance through petty, ancient debt. She cannot dictate my present circumstances, so she weaponizes my childhood. The braces cost $3,000 over a decade ago. I generate that specific amount in passive income before noon on a typical Tuesday. I lean back in my leather chair. My pulse remains slow and even. I feel no urge to defend myself. I do not draft a fiery response explaining my net worth. Engaging with a narcissist is a losing proposition because they thrive on your emotional exhaustion. Instead of typing a reply, I apply the forensic tools of my trade. In commercial real estate, rigorous due diligence separates the survivors from the casualties. I possess access to comprehensive municipal databases, property tax registries, and corporate filings. If my mother wants to discuss financial obligations, I will examine the balance sheets. I open a secure background screening portal. I type Richard Gray into the search bar. I set the parameters for his logistics firm. For my entire life, my father projected the image of a titan. He drove imported sedans, wore bespoke suits, and paid steep country club dues without blinking. The screen loading before me reveals the empirical reality of his current standing. The data is brutal. The regional logistics sector experienced a severe downturn 2 years ago, but Richard refused to adjust his lavish overhead. The corporate filings show 3 recent Uniform Commercial Code liens filed against his warehouse equipment. He is borrowing money against his own forklifts and shipping pallets just to make payroll. His business is a hollow shell, held together by high-interest credit and sheer denial. I dig deeper. I pivot from his corporate entity to his personal assets. I access the county clerk portal and pull the deed history for the colonial home where I grew up. The house sits on a manicured, tree-lined lot in a prestigious suburb. They purchased it 30 years ago. By any traditional metric, it should be free and clear of any encumbrances by now. I click on the municipal lien history. A fresh document appears on the screen dated exactly 3 years prior. It is a home equity line of credit, a heavy second mortgage. I analyze the timeline and the loan amount. The bank approved a withdrawal of $250,000. The origination date aligns perfectly with the month Richard handed Jessica the check for her Tuscan destination wedding. It also coincides with the incorporation date of Elevate Event PR. The revelation strikes with the cold clarity of a Maine winter. They did not have the cash for that wedding. They did not possess the surplus wealth to bankroll Jessica's luxury business venture. To fund the golden child's aesthetic, my parents cannibalized their own sanctuary. They leveraged the roof over their heads to pay for imported orchids, designer gowns, and a high-end commercial storefront. They are sinking. The water is rising rapidly above their chins, and they are treading water to keep Jessica standing on their shoulders. My mother is demanding reimbursement for teenage orthodontics because she is terrified of her upcoming mortgage payment. Her arrogance is nothing but a fragile mask for deep systemic insolvency. I close the county registry tab. I reach into my pocket and pull out my brass plumb bob, setting it on the desk. The heavy metal grounds me. I do not feel pity. You cannot save drowning people who insist they are standing on dry land. If you reach out a hand, they will only pull you under the surface with them. An hour later, a sharp chime interrupts the quiet of my office. A priority alert flashes across my secondary monitor. It originates from the property management software. Marcus, my lead manager, requires executive authorization on a compliance action. I open the dashboard. The file relates to Suite 200, the downtown retail space occupied by Elevate Event PR. Jessica failed to secure her phantom international account. Her desperate stall tactics evaporated. The grace period expired at midnight. The automated accounting system has officially designated her commercial lease as defaulted. I review the attached ledger. The figures are stark and unforgiving. Unpaid base rent, accrued late penalties, shared maintenance fee deficits. The total balance owed to Coastal Heritage Holdings sits at $24,800. Marcus attached a drafted legal document for my review. It is a formal notice to quit. In this state, commercial tenancy laws are swift. When a business tenant defaults, the landlord does not need to wait months to reclaim the asset. The laws prioritize the property owner. The document is standard legal boilerplate, but the real-world implications are devastating. It dictates that the tenant must cure the deficit within 14 days or surrender the premises immediately. If the balance remains unpaid at the end of the countdown, the landlord retains the right to change the locks, seize all physical property inside the unit, and terminate the lease without further negotiation. I read the PDF. I visualize Jessica's pristine downtown office, the imported Italian desk, the velvet waiting room chairs, the expensive podcast equipment she uses to project her manufactured lifestyle to her followers. All of it sits inside a brick structure that I control. All of it is now subject to legal seizure to satisfy her debt. My mouse hovers over the approval button. I think about the bank check sliding across the mahogany table at the country club. I think about my sister driving her leased Range Rover past my gates, frantically dialing our mother to report my presence like a neighborhood watch informant. I press the left mouse button. The click echoes in the quiet room. The authorization transmits directly to Marcus. The legal machinery engages. The 14-day eviction countdown officially begins. The hourglass is flipped, and the sand is running out. Jessica has 2 weeks to find $24,000, or she loses the physical core of her entire identity. She will panic. She will turn to the only source of funding she has ever known. She will call Richard and Susan, expecting them to write another check. But I possess the ledgers. I know the vault is empty. When she reaches for her parents this time, she will find nothing but maxed-out credit lines and a heavily mortgaged childhood home. The digital skirmishes are ending. By ignoring their emails and enforcing my contracts, I am pushing them out of the digital realm and forcing them into the harsh daylight of the physical world. Soon the screens will not protect them. They will have to face reality, and that reality is going to lead them directly to my construction site. When digital intimidation fails, desperate people resort to physical confrontation. The transition from angry emails to an ambush happens on a Thursday morning. My current project is a massive undertaking in the heart of downtown Portland. Coastal Heritage Holdings is converting an abandoned brick warehouse into a mixed-use development. The ground floor will feature high-end retail space, while the upper levels will house luxury lofts. The property is a sprawling, chaotic environment of exposed steel, raw timber, and concrete dust. The air smells sharply of cut pine and diesel exhaust from the generators. I arrive at the site at 6:30 in the morning. I am wearing my standard uniform: scuffed work boots, heavy denim trousers, a high-visibility vest, and a white hard hat. I carry a metal clipboard holding the daily punch list. I am not sitting behind a desk today. I am actively managing a crew of 12 seasoned contractors. Plumbers, electricians, and framers move around me in a coordinated, noisy dance. At 9:15, I am standing near the loading dock reviewing a complex electrical schematic with my master electrician, Dave. The noise level is deafening. A circular saw screams through a stack of plywood nearby. Then I see the movement near the perimeter. A chain-link fence surrounds the entire property, designed to keep pedestrians safe from the hazards of a commercial construction zone. Bright orange signs clearly state, "Danger, authorized personnel only." 2 figures bypass the open vehicle gate, ignoring the signage. I recognize the posture immediately. It is the rigid, entitled march of a woman who believes the rules apply only to other people. Susan Gray walks onto my job site wearing a tailored wool coat and pearl earrings. Trailing slightly behind her is Jessica, clutching a designer handbag, navigating the uneven, debris-strewn asphalt in stiletto heels. My mother did not find me by accident. She spent the last 3 days searching for my heavy-duty pickup truck, hunting for the company logo painted on the doors. She tracked me down because her emails went unanswered, and the silence drove her to a breaking point. She needs an audience. She needs to perform her authority. Dave the electrician spots them. He lowers his blueprint, frowning at the uninvited guests. "Who are they?" he asks, raising his voice over the noise of the saws. "Stay here," I tell him. I hand him the clipboard. I walk toward the loading dock ramp. I do not run. I do not show alarm. I move with the steady, measured pace of a site manager dealing with a minor logistical nuisance. I stop at the base of the ramp, placing myself squarely between the active work zone and the trespassing women. Susan stops 10 feet away from me. Her face is a mask of furious indignation. The country club matriarch has descended into the dirt, and she expects the dirt to part for her. Roxana. Her voice is sharp, cutting through the ambient noise of the heavy machinery. She does not say hello. She does not ask how I am. She launches directly into an attack. "I have sent you 7 emails this week. You do not ignore me. You will answer me when I contact you." I do not respond to her words. I look at her shoes. Then I look at Jessica, who is shivering in the cold morning air, her expensive heels sinking slightly into the soft dirt. "You need to leave," I say. My voice is devoid of emotion. This is an active commercial job site. Susan steps forward, closing the distance. She attempts to deploy the physical intimidation tactics that worked when I was a teenager living under her roof. She points a manicured finger at my chest. "Do not tell me what to do. You are going to listen to me right now. You are embarrassing this family. Jessica saw you pretending to own a house in Cape Elizabeth. You are a painter. You are a day laborer, and you owe us for the money we spent raising you." She is trying to trigger a regression. She wants the frightened 28-year-old girl who begged for a bridge loan. She wants me to lower my eyes, to apologize, to shrink. I do not shrink. I expand into the space. I draw a breath of the dusty air and let the authority of my profession take control. I am no longer her scapegoat daughter. I am the Chief Executive Officer of Coastal Heritage Holdings, and she is threatening my liability insurance. I drop the polite daughter persona and switch to my foreman voice. It is a specific tone. It is loud, flat, and carrying a distinct threat of consequences. It is the voice I use to stop a crane operator from making a fatal error. "Stop moving. You are violating federal OSHA safety protocols. You do not have hard hats. You do not have proper footwear. You are uninsured liabilities on a closed commercial site." Susan flinches. The sheer volume and absolute authority of my command startles her. The circular saw nearby powers down the operator, noticing the confrontation. Several members of my crew stop working, turning their heads to watch. The sudden quiet amplifies the tension. Susan attempts to rally. Her face flushes a deep red. "You will look at me with respect when I am speaking to you." I point a gloved finger at a thick yellow line painted across the concrete 50 feet behind them. "Step behind the yellow tape," I command, my voice echoing off the brick walls. "If you take one more step forward, I am calling the Portland police and having you both arrested and charged with criminal trespassing." The power dynamic snaps audibly in the cold air. For 3 decades, Susan held the monopoly on authority. She dictated the terms of every interaction. Now she is standing in a dusty warehouse, surrounded by burly men in tool belts, and the daughter she despises is threatening her with law enforcement. She realizes she has no leverage here. She possesses no power in my domain. Jessica senses the shift. The golden child is not equipped for public humiliation. She is already crumbling under the secret weight of a $24,000 eviction notice, and this hostile environment is too much. "Mom, let us just go," Jessica whispers, her voice shaking. "People are staring." Jessica takes a hasty step backward, eager to retreat toward the safety of her Range Rover. She misjudges the terrain. Her 4-inch stiletto heel lands directly on a thick patch of fine, slick drywall dust. Her ankle rolls outward. She loses her balance entirely. Her arms flail as she drops, landing hard on the concrete floor. A cloud of white gypsum powder billows up, coating her black designer slacks and her expensive cashmere sweater. The impact scuffs the leather of her $900 shoes. A heavy, agonizing silence falls over the loading dock. Even the distant traffic noise seems to fade. Jessica sits on the dirty concrete, staring at her ruined clothes, her face pale with shock. She looks small, fragile, and entirely out of place. Susan stares at her fallen golden child, then turns her gaze back to me. The embarrassment morphs into a toxic, desperate rage. She realizes she has lost the skirmish, so she resorts to scorched earth tactics. She decides to destroy my livelihood. "You think you are so powerful," Susan screams, her voice cracking with fury. "You think wearing a hard hat makes you important. I know people on the city council. I play tennis with the zoning board members. I am going to make one phone call today, Roxana. I am going to have your little contractor license revoked permanently. You will never paint another house in this state." I stand on the ramp looking down at my mother. I do not laugh, though the irony is profound. Susan is threatening to revoke a license that does not exist. She is threatening to end a painting career I do not possess. She believes she is intimidating a low-level day laborer, completely oblivious to the empirical reality surrounding her. She does not know she is standing inside a $3 million building. She does not know I own the brick walls echoing her screams. She does not know I own the ground her daughter is sitting on. She does not know my name is on the deed, hidden safely behind the shield of my limited liability company. More importantly, she does not know that her golden child, currently sitting in the dust, is 12 days away from being legally locked out of her own office. "Get off my sight," I say, lowering my voice to a dangerous quiet register. Susan grabs Jessica by the arm, hauling her upward. Jessica brushes ineffectively at the white powder coating her pants, tears of humiliation streaking her makeup. They retreat toward the vehicle gate, walking fast, refusing to look back. I watch them cross the yellow line and exit the property. I signal to Dave the electrician. The circular saw fires up again, resuming its high-pitched scream. The crew goes back to work. The interruption is over. But I know the war is just beginning. Susan made a threat in front of my crew. She promised to utilize her country club connections to sabotage my business. She is going to attempt to leverage her social status to trigger a municipal inspection. She thinks she is setting a trap for me. She does not realize she is about to walk directly into mine. When you throw a stone in a glass house, the shards do not hit your target. They fall backward, slicing the hands of the person who threw it. I return to my blueprints, waiting for the phone to ring. The fake olive branch is coming, and I am ready to accept the invitation. Following a public humiliation, conventional wisdom suggests the defeated party will retreat. But individuals fueled by financial desperation do not possess the luxury of retreat. Their survival instincts override their pride. I anticipate a strike from the local zoning board. I expect Susan to weaponize her social network and dispatch a city inspector to my downtown Portland warehouse. I spend 48 hours ensuring every permit is prominently displayed and every safety protocol is executed flawlessly. The municipal strike never materializes. Instead, the Postal Service delivers a calculated pivot. I walk to the end of the long granite driveway at the Cliff House to check the secure mailbox. Inside, resting against a stack of architectural digests, sits a thick, cream-colored envelope. The paper is heavy, expensive, textured cardstock. My name is written across the front in sweeping, deliberate calligraphy. I recognize the handwriting immediately. It belongs to Susan. I carry the envelope into my home office and slice the seal with a steel letter opener. It is an invitation. The text requests my presence for a family dinner at the Coastal Country Club on Friday evening at 7 o'clock. The brief note mentions putting recent misunderstandings behind us and moving forward as a unified front. It is a fake olive branch. It is a Trojan horse wrapped in country club etiquette. I check my digital dashboard. Jessica is currently on day 6 of the 14-day eviction countdown for her commercial office space. The sands are draining from the hourglass. She needs $24,000 to halt the legal seizure of her assets, plus operating capital, to keep her failing public relations firm afloat. Her parents are equally trapped. My quiet background check already confirmed Richard is borrowing against his own warehouse forklifts and dodging a second mortgage. The bank vault is empty. They cannot rescue their golden child this time. So they are turning to the scapegoat. They witnessed my crew. They saw the scale of the downtown project. Susan still believes I am merely a subcontractor, a glorified painter wearing a hard hat. But she calculates that a contractor managing a site that large must possess liquid savings. In their minds, blue-collar money is dumb money. They assume I am unsophisticated, eager for their approval, and easily manipulated. I decide to attend the dinner. I do not go to reconcile. I go to collect intelligence. If you want an adversary to reveal their true agenda, you must make them feel superior. You must confirm their established biases. I deploy a tactical red herring through my wardrobe. I select a tailored charcoal wool blazer and a crisp white button-down shirt. The garments fit perfectly, projecting a baseline level of professional stability. But for my footwear, I bypass the polished leather Oxfords. I deliberately lace up my heavy, steel-toed work boots. They are scuffed at the reinforced toes, stained with dried mud and a faint dusting of gypsum powder from the warehouse. The boots serve as a physical totem of the dirt they mocked 3 years ago. The visual contradiction is the bait. The blazer says I have a bank account. The boots tell them I am still beneath their social strata. It is the exact profile of a target they believe they can bleed. Friday evening arrives with a biting chill. I bypass the complimentary valet service, parking my heavy-duty pickup truck near the back of the manicured lot. I walk into the grand foyer of the country club. The environment assaults my senses with aggressive familiarity. The scent of roasted garlic, expensive floor wax, and aged scotch hangs in the heated air. The ambient noise is a low hum of clinking silverware and guarded conversations. The hostess guides me to the private dining room. I step through the arched doorway. A profound wave of déjà vu washes over me. They are seated at the exact same mahogany table where this entire fracture began. Richard sits on the left, swirling an amber liquid over a single large ice cube. Susan occupies the center chair, her posture rigid, wearing a silk blouse and her signature pearl necklace. Jessica sits on the right. The golden child looks terrible. Beneath the flawless makeup, her skin is pale. Her eyes dart nervously around the room, avoiding my gaze. The strain of the ticking eviction clock is eroding her curated aesthetic. She is vibrating with unexpressed panic. I approach the table. The heavy tread of my work boots thuds softly against the woven carpet. Richard glances down, noting the scuffed steel toes. A microscopic smirk touches the corner of his mouth. The red herring works instantly. He feels superior. I pull out the fourth chair and sit down. No one apologizes. The warehouse incident, the screaming, the safety violations, the ruined designer shoes, none of it is mentioned. In my family, uncomfortable truths are simply buried under polite fiction. "We hear your little painting business is doing quite well," Susan says. She forces a smile. It does not reach her eyes. The phrasing is a masterclass in passive aggression. She acknowledges my employment while simultaneously diminishing it with the word little. I order a sparkling water with lime from the hovering waiter. I fold my hands on the pristine white tablecloth and wait. "We want to bring you back into the fold," Susan continues, her voice dripping with artificial warmth. "Family is the most vital asset we possess, Roxana. It is unnatural for us to remain estranged over petty disagreements." I look directly into her eyes. "You threatened to revoke my contractor license 2 days ago." Susan waves a manicured hand through the air, dismissing the reality of her own actions. Emotions run high in stressful environments. Let us focus on the future. The waiter delivers my sparkling water. The condensation drips down the side of the crystal glass. The pleasantries evaporate. The trap is set, and Richard assumes the role of the closer. He clears his throat, a low, rumbling sound of practiced authority. He sets his scotch glass on a coaster. Your sister is navigating a period of unprecedented growth, Richard says, leaning forward. His tone shifts into a practiced corporate pitch. Elevate Event PR is on the verge of capturing significant international market share. However, rapid expansion often creates temporary cash flow friction. Jessica stares at her pristine napkin, her knuckles white as she grips her lap. She knows the international expansion is a fabricated lie. She knows she is weeks away from losing her office furniture. Richard reaches into the leather briefcase resting beside his chair. He withdraws a thick, glossy, professionally bound document. The cover features the elegant embossed logo of Jessica's agency. He places his hand flat on top of the document. He looks past my shoulder, avoiding direct eye contact, mirroring his exact physical posture from 3 years ago. He slides the heavy binder across the polished mahogany. It stops directly in front of my sparkling water. We are offering you a rare opportunity, Richard states, his voice smooth and persuasive. We are inviting you to invest in your sister's brand, a bridging capital injection to facilitate this next quarter. I stare at the glossy cover. How much? I ask. My voice registers zero emotion. $100,000, Richard replies, without blinking. In exchange, you receive a minority equity stake in Elevate Event PR. I let the number hang in the air. $100,000. It is a staggering sum to ask from a daughter they discarded. It confirms my earlier forensic analysis. They are not merely trying to cover Jessica's $24,000 commercial rent deficit. They are trying to extract enough capital to float their own sinking ship. They are bundling her business debt with their own mortgage crisis, hoping the blue-collar scapegoat will unknowingly subsidize their survival. Since you do not have a family of your own, it is the right thing to do, Susan adds. She weaponizes my independence, framing my lack of a husband or children as a moral obligation to fund her favorite child. The audacity is breathtaking. They threw a $150,000 wedding check at Jessica because she was the success. Now they demand $100,000 from the dirt worker to hide the failure. I do not laugh. I do not throw my glass. I maintain the cold, analytical lens of a historic property developer who spends her life evaluating structural integrity. I reach out and place my hand on the glossy cover of the business proposal. The binding is smooth and expensive. I pull the document toward me. I will review the financials, I tell them. Richard exhales a faint sound of premature victory. Susan smiles, her shoulders relaxing. They think they have won. They think the scuffed boots and the quiet demeanor mean I am ready to hand over my capital for a crumb of their validation. They do not realize they just handed a loaded weapon to a forensic reader. I open the heavy cover, turn past the glowing executive summary, and bypass the fabricated revenue projections. I am hunting for the liability disclosures. I am looking for the hidden rot inside the timber. And what I am about to find, buried in the fine print, is going to detonate the entire foundation of their lives. The atmosphere in the private dining room shifts. The tension eases, replaced by a subtle, toxic relief emanating from my parents. They watch my hands resting on the glossy binder. In their minds, the transaction is already complete. The prodigal daughter, desperate for approval, is going to write the check. I open the heavy cover. The pages smell of fresh toner and expensive binding glue. The first section is an aggressive exercise in fiction. Jessica's executive summary paints a picture of a boutique public relations agency poised for global dominance. The revenue projections curve upward at a staggering, unrealistic angle. The list of prospective international clients reads like a fantasy novel written by a desperate woman. I flip past the glossy photographs of staged events. I ignore the pie charts and the aggressive marketing jargon. As a historic property developer, my eyes are calibrated for structural weakness. I do not care about the fresh paint on the facade. I care about the foundation. I bypass the vanity metrics and navigate directly to the back of the binder. I locate the financial disclosures and liability schedules. This section is dense, printed in a smaller, cramped font. It is designed to be skimmed, not studied. The language is intentionally obtuse, laden with heavy accounting terminology meant to exhaust the casual reader. But I am not a casual reader. I spend my life analyzing municipal tax registries, commercial lease guarantees, and complex title deeds. My brain automatically isolates the crucial data points. I scan the column listing Elevate Event PR's current outstanding corporate debt. The numbers confirm my previous digital reconnaissance. The agency is bleeding capital. The operating lines of credit are exhausted. The vendor accounts payable column is bloated with delinquent invoices. Then my eyes catch a specific alphanumeric string halfway down the page. It is listed under a subcategory labeled Secured Commercial Obligations. The entry details a high-interest, short-term mezzanine loan originating from a predatory private lending firm, not a traditional bank. The principal amount is staggering. It is the kind of toxic debt a business owner only accepts when every other legitimate avenue is closed. My finger traces the line across the page to the column designated Collateral Guarantee. Private lenders do not issue massive commercial loans based on projected international expansion. They require hard, tangible assets. They require property. I read the address listed as the secured collateral. My breath stops in my chest. The ambient noise of the country club fades into a low, buzzing static in my ears. The address printed in the fine print is not the downtown commercial office space. It is a residential property. It is a colonial home sitting on a tree-lined street in a prestigious suburb. It is the house where I grew up. It is the house currently occupied by Susan and Richard. I stare at the black ink. The implications cascade through my mind with devastating velocity. A commercial entity cannot leverage a residential property unless the business owner holds the title deed. Jessica does not own the colonial home. Richard and Susan hold the deed. For this specific loan to exist, the primary title holders must sign the security agreement explicitly putting their home at risk to guarantee the commercial debt. I look up from the binder. Richard is casually swirling his scotch. He looks mildly bored, waiting for me to finish reading. Susan is adjusting a diamond ring on her finger, projecting the calm patience of a wealthy matriarch. I look at Jessica. The golden child is not calm. She is rigid. Her shoulders are drawn tight toward her ears. A fine sheen of sweat glistens on her forehead, dampening her hairline despite the air-conditioned chill of the dining room. She is gripping her cloth napkin so fiercely, her knuckles are bloodless. She catches me looking at her. Her eyes widen in stark, unadulterated terror. She knows exactly what section of the binder I am reading. The truth hits me with the force of a swinging wrecking ball. Richard and Susan did not sign that security agreement. They do not know this loan exists. Jessica fraudulently listed her parents' residential home as collateral on a predatory commercial loan. She forged the asset declarations. She likely intercepted the mail, manipulated the digital signatures, and bypassed the traditional underwriting safeguards used by private lenders who prioritize speed over strict compliance. My earlier background check revealed a second mortgage taken out by my parents to fund Jessica's initial startup costs. That was a legal, albeit foolish, financial decision made by Richard and Susan. This is entirely different. This is catastrophic. Jessica is drowning in debt. When she failed to secure legitimate capital, she cannibalized her own parents. If Elevate Event PR defaults on this specific mezzanine loan, the private lender possesses the legal right to foreclose on the colonial home. They will strip the property from my parents to satisfy the commercial debt. Richard and Susan are sitting across from me, arrogantly demanding $100,000, completely unaware that their golden child has already signed away the roof over their heads. The boulder drops. The foundation is not just cracking, it is gone. I hold the ultimate secret. I possess the power to detonate this family right here, right now, over sparkling water and untouched stakes. I could point to the fine print. I could read the collateral address aloud. I could watch Susan's pristine facade shatter as she realizes her favorite daughter committed felony fraud and bankrupted their retirement. I look at Jessica again. She is vibrating with panic. She is silently begging me with her eyes. She needs me to write the check not to expand her business, but to pay off the private lender before the default triggers a foreclosure notice on our parents' home. She needs my blue-collar dirt money to bury her white-collar crime. The silence stretches heavy and loaded. The power dynamic in the room has inverted entirely, though only Jessica and I realize it. I am the ghost landlord holding her commercial eviction notice. I am the forensic reader holding the proof of her fraudulent collateral. The scapegoat holds the keys to the entire kingdom. I feel a cold, absolute calm wash over me. The clinical detachment of my profession anchors my response. Revenge is not a dramatic outburst. Revenge is allowing gravity to do the work. If I expose the fraud now, Richard will scramble to protect his golden child. He will liquidate his remaining retirement, borrow against his life insurance, and shield Jessica from the consequences. I will not save her. And I will not grant them the mercy of a quick death. They built this leaning structure. They need to be inside it when the walls finally collapse. I reach out and close the heavy cover of the binder. The thick paper makes a definitive snapping sound in the quiet room. Richard stops swirling his scotch. Susan leans forward, a tight, expectant smile returning to her lips. "Well," Richard says, his tone falsely jovial, "the projections are compelling, are they not? A minority equity stake provides a robust return on a relatively modest capital injection. We can have the lawyers draft the transfer documents on Monday." I keep my hands flat on the table. I look at my father, then my mother, and finally, I lock eyes with my sister. Jessica stops breathing. I slide the glossy binder back across the polished mahogany. It stops directly in front of Richard's scotch glass. "No," I say. The word hangs in the air. A single syllable delivered with zero inflection. Susan's smile vanishes instantly. The pearl necklace suddenly looks tight against her throat. "No," she repeats, her voice sharp, the artificial warmth evaporating. "What do you mean, no? We are offering you a ground floor opportunity." "I mean, the fundamentals are deeply flawed," I state, keeping my voice level. "The overhead is unsustainable. The client retention is non-existent. This is not an investment. This is a bailout for a sinking ship. I do not throw capital into failing structures." Richard's face flushes dark red. The rejection stings, but the insult to his business acumen infuriates him. "You lack the vision to understand corporate scaling," he snaps, abandoning the polished pitch. "You spend your days swinging a hammer. You do not comprehend executive finance." I look at Jessica. A tear spills over her lower lash line, ruining her expensive makeup. She knows the truth. She knows I comprehend exactly what is happening in the executive finance section. I push my chair back and stand up. The heavy tread of my work boots is the only sound in the room. I do not leave a tip. I do not say goodbye. I walk out of the private dining room, leaving them to their rotting foundation. The fake olive branch is broken. I decline the bait. My refusal guarantees Susan will escalate her attacks. She will interpret my rejection as an unforgivable insult, and she will unleash her promised smear campaign against my construction business. She will pick up the phone tomorrow and call her contacts on the zoning board. She will try to destroy my livelihood. She does not know that her frantic attempts to ruin me will be the exact catalyst that triggers her own destruction. The municipal machinery is unforgiving, and she is about to point it directly at her own husband. A wounded narcissist does not reflect on a rejection. She retaliates. The denial at the country club severed Susan's illusion of control. I refuse to hand over my capital, and worse, I refuse to validate their manufactured reality. By Monday morning, she launches her promised crusade to dismantle my livelihood. She utilizes her social network, weaponizing the women she plays tennis with and the affluent neighbors who serve on local historic preservation boards. She drops calculated hints over iced tea and making direct, hysterical phone calls to the city zoning office. Her narrative is specific and damaging. She claims Coastal Heritage Holdings is a rogue operation. She tells the municipal clerks that I am cutting corners on lead paint abatement at the downtown brick warehouse, exposing the public to toxic environmental hazards. In the historic restoration industry, a lead paint accusation is the equivalent of a bomb threat. It halts progress immediately. It forces mandatory inspections and drains thousands of dollars in unbudgeted delays. Susan believes she has executed a lethal strike. She assumes my business is as fragile as Jessica's public relations firm. She fails to understand that I am a known entity in this jurisdiction. At 10 o'clock on Tuesday morning, my cell phone rings. The caller ID displays the name Greg Mitchell, a senior commercial building inspector for the city. I have worked alongside Greg for 6 years. He knows the thickness of my drywall, the grade of my electrical conduit, and the exactitude of my safety protocols. I step away from the noise of the framing crew and answer the call. Moxana Gregg says his voice tired, carrying the weight of a bureaucrat dealing with unreasonable citizens. You have a very persistent fan calling the main switchboard, a woman named Susan Gray. She is demanding an emergency injunction to padlock your downtown site. I look up at the exposed steel beams of my project. I do not panic. I feel the cold, familiar calm of a developer who holds immaculate paperwork. What is the specific complaint, I ask? Improper hazardous material disposal. Greg reads from a form, specifically lead particulate contamination. I told her your environmental manifests were logged and approved last month. She threatened to call the mayor. I have to send a junior inspector down there today just to close the ticket. It is standard procedure. Send them, I reply. I will have the HEPA filtration logs and the sealed disposal receipts waiting on a clipboard in the lobby. The junior inspector arrives an hour later. He finds the containment zones perfectly sealed under negative air pressure. The hazard protocols exceed state mandates. He signs the compliance form, apologizes for the interruption, and leaves. Susan's strike hits a reinforced concrete wall and shatters. But her attempt to leverage the municipal code against me opens a strategic doorway. She wants to use city bureaucracy as a weapon. I decide to show her how a professional wields that exact instrument. I drive back to the Cliff House, brew a cup of black coffee, and sit at my mahogany desk. The dual monitors cast a pale light across the room. I pull up the public records for Richard's logistics hub. The facility sits on the industrial edge of the city, a sprawling metal structure surrounded by loading docks and diesel fuel pumps. Operating an industrial shipping center requires rigorous annual municipal certifications. You need active fire suppression sign-offs. You need structural integrity validations for heavy load-bearing racks. You need environmental runoff permits. I know Richard is bleeding cash to fund his lifestyle and Jessica's debt. When a business owner faces a liquidity crisis, preventive maintenance is always the first expense they eliminate. I access the open-source commercial enforcement registry. I type in his corporate address. The data confirms my hypothesis. I find 3 lapsed certifications. The sprinkler system inspection expired 14 months ago. The loading dock retaining wall was flagged for concrete spalling during a preliminary survey 2 years prior, with no recorded remediation plan filed. The hazardous material runoff permit for the fueling station is delinquent. I compile the data into a clean, concise dossier. I highlight the expired dates. I attach the relevant municipal statutes governing industrial hazards. I create a secure, anonymous email address using an encrypted virtual private network. I route the message directly to the Commercial Enforcement Division of the Portland Code Office. This is the exact same division Susan has been harassing for 48 hours. The irony operates with lethal efficiency. The city dispatchers are already annoyed. They have fielded endless frantic phone calls from a wealthy woman named Gray demanding they investigate a Gray family property for safety violations. When an actionable, evidence-backed dossier arrives in their inbox highlighting severe, documented violations at another Gray family commercial address, the bureaucracy acts with swift precision. They assume it is part of the same investigation. Wednesday morning brings a fleet of white city vehicles to Richard's logistics hub. This is not a polite scheduled visit. It is a surprise municipal raid. The enforcement officers walk through the loading bays. They document the rusted sprinkler valves. They photograph the crumbling concrete supports underneath the heavy forklift zones. They test the soil near the diesel pumps. The violations are egregious. The inspectors do not issue a warning. They issue an immediate stop work order. They staple bright orange placards to the main entrance doors, declaring the structure unsafe for commercial operation until the hazards are remediated. The physical closure of the warehouse is devastating, but the financial domino effect is terminal. In commercial real estate, municipal violations do not exist in a vacuum. Financial institutions employ automated software to monitor the legal status of the properties securing their loans. Richard's logistics business operates on a revolving commercial line of credit. The covenant of that loan explicitly requires the borrower to maintain all municipal operating permits. When the city files the stop work order into the public database, the bank's algorithm flags the asset as a critical risk. By Thursday afternoon, the financial institution moves to protect its capital. They place an administrative freeze on Richard's operating accounts. The liquidity vanishes instantly. He cannot process incoming payments. He cannot write checks to his vendors. He cannot make his weekly payroll. His entire corporate structure is paralyzed. He picks up his desk phone, dialing his loan officer, only to be routed to the risk mitigation department. Susan's attempt to destroy my job site resulted in the padlocking of her husband's business. She threw a match into a dry forest, unaware she was standing in the center of the brush. While Richard and Susan scramble to understand why the city turned against them, they remain entirely blind to the other clock ticking down in the background. They are focused on the industrial park, oblivious to the deadline approaching the downtown retail sector. The 14-day grace period on Suite 200 is expiring. Friday morning is hours away. The sun is about to rise over the Atlantic, bringing the final day of Jessica's commercial tenancy. The golden child is going to arrive at her pristine public relations agency, expecting to conduct business as usual. She will reach for the brass handle of her office door, unaware that the locks have already been changed and the eviction notice bearing my company's name is waiting for her on the glass. Friday morning arrives with a brittle frost coating the coastal grass. I sit at my desk inside the Cliff House long before the sun breaks over the Atlantic horizon. A cup of black coffee rests near my keyboard. The room is silent, insulated by thick plaster and stone. My secondary monitor displays a grid of live security camera feeds covering my various commercial properties. I double-click the top right quadrant, expanding the feed for the downtown Portland retail building. The high-definition camera provides a clear view of the sidewalk and the arched glass entrance to Suite 200. It is 7:45 in the morning. 10 minutes ago, a bonded commercial locksmith packed up his tool bag and walked out of the frame. He replaced every cylinder in the brass hardware. The laws governing commercial tenancy differ vastly from residential housing regulations. A residential eviction is a slow, bureaucratic crawl requiring court dates and judicial sympathies. Commercial evictions are swift, clinical, and unapologetically favor the property owner. When a business tenant signs a lease, they agree to strict terms regarding collateral. If you fail to pay the rent, you forfeit the space, and the landlord legally assumes ownership of every physical asset left inside the unit to satisfy the debt. I watch the digital clock on the security feed tick forward. At exactly 8 o'clock, a white Range Rover pulls to the curb, parking in a loading zone. Jessica steps onto the pavement. She wears a tailored camel hair coat and carries a steaming latte in a paper cup. Her posture projects unearned confidence. She assumes today is a standard Friday. She plans to walk into her curated sanctuary, sit behind her imported Italian desk, and pretend to run a successful international public relations firm. She walks toward the arched glass doors. She reaches for the heavy brass handle and pulls. The door does not yield. Jessica frowns, shifting her coffee to her other hand. She grips the handle again, pulling with her body weight. The deadbolt holds firm. The thick glass rattles faintly in its frame, but the entrance remains sealed. She steps back, confused. She looks down at the locking mechanism, assuming a simple mechanical jam. Then her eyes travel upward and focus on the center of the glass pane. A bright white legal document is taped to the inside of the door, facing outward. I watch her lean forward to read the bold black typography. The text is unambiguous. It declares that the premises and all contents therein have been seized by the property owner, Coastal Heritage Holdings, due to a breach of contract and severe financial delinquency. The camera captures the exact second the reality penetrates her denial. Her shoulders drop. The paper coffee cup slips from her fingers, hitting the pavement. The lid pops off, sending a wave of pale brown liquid pooling around the toes of her designer boots. She does not notice the spill. She presses her hands flat against the cold glass, peering into the shadows of the office. Inside that suite sits the entire physical manifestation of her identity. The velvet waiting room chairs, the expensive audio equipment she uses to record her branding podcasts, the dual monitors, the client files, the aesthetic staging decor. It is all locked behind a pane of reinforced glass that she does not own. Her facade has been seized. Jessica pulls her cell phone from her coat pocket. Her hands are shaking so severely she drops the device, fumbles to retrieve it from the wet pavement, and swipes at the screen. A moment later, the internal phone line on my desk chimes. It is Marcus, my property manager. He knows I want to monitor the execution of this specific default. He patches me into a silent, listen-only extension. This is a standard protocol during hostile asset seizures, ensuring the owner can verify the manager adheres strictly to legal compliance. I put the call on speaker. Jessica is screaming. Her voice is shrill, vibrating with raw panic. "You cannot do this," she yells into the receiver. "I have a podcast recording at noon. I have client meetings. You have to open this door right now." Marcus responds with the steady, unbothered tone of a man who has evicted dozens of failed businesses. "Good morning, ma'am. As detailed in the multiple notices sent to your registered email, your grace period expired at midnight. The landlord has exercised the right of repossession." "You stole my property," Jessica shrieks, pacing the sidewalk in front of the camera. "My computers are in there. My furniture is in there. I am calling the police. I am suing your company for theft." Marcus lets her finish her threat. He does not raise his voice. Section 4, paragraph B of your commercial lease agreement grants the landlord a security interest in all personal property kept on the premises. You owe $24,800 in arrears and penalties. Until that balance is satisfied via certified wire transfer, those assets belong to Coastal Heritage Holdings. Jessica gasps for air. The legal reality suffocates her threats. "I need to get inside," she pleads, her voice cracking, the anger dissolving into desperate bargaining. "Just let me get my laptop, please. I cannot run my business without my files." The suite remains secured until the ledger is balanced, Marcus states. "Have a productive day." The line clicks dead. On my monitor, I watch Jessica lower the phone from her ear. She stares at the dead-bolted door. The illusion of the golden child evaporates, leaving a frightened, bankrupt woman standing in a puddle of spilled coffee. She immediately dials another number. She presses the phone to her ear, pacing in tight, erratic circles. She is calling Richard. When the world collapses, the golden child always runs to the architect of her privilege. She expects her father to act as the ultimate safety net. She needs him to log into his bank, initiate a wire transfer, and purchase her salvation, just like he purchased her destination wedding. I turn my attention to my primary monitor. I open the secure payment gateway for Coastal Heritage Holdings. If Richard intends to rescue her, the capital must pass through this digital portal. I watch the blank ledger screen. The silence in my office stretches. 5 minutes pass. 10 minutes. A notification chimes. A new transaction is attempting to process under the Elevate Event PR tenant account. I click the detailed view. The name on the routing profile belongs to Richard Gray. He is attempting to push an electronic check for the exact sum of $24,800. The digital status wheel spins, querying the external banking institution to verify the liquidity. I sit perfectly still. I know what the system is going to find. The wheel stops. A red error code flashes across my screen. Transaction declined, account restricted. Richard does not accept the rejection. A minute later, a second attempt registers. He tries a different routing number, pivoting to a secondary business account tied to his logistics warehouse. The wheel spins. The red text flashes again. Transaction declined, account frozen. He tries a personal credit card. The system kicks it back instantly for insufficient available credit. The municipal strike I initiated 2 days prior functioned flawlessly. The city inspectors placed a stop work order on his hazardous warehouse. The bank algorithms detected the severe compliance failure and placed a hard freeze on every asset tied to his name. Richard possesses zero liquidity. He cannot move a single dollar. I picture my father sitting in his home office, staring at his own computer monitor in mounting horror. He is clicking buttons, refreshing screens, watching his financial power evaporate into digital errors. He cannot wire the funds. He cannot save his favorite daughter. On the security feed, Jessica lowers her phone. Her posture sags. Richard just delivered the news. She turns and walks slowly back to her Range Rover, climbing into the driver's seat. She sits behind the steering wheel, trapped outside the glass walls of a building she used to look down on. Neither of them knows I am watching. They view Coastal Heritage Holdings as a cruel, faceless corporate entity ruining their lives. They have no idea the landlord holding the keys is the same woman they told to play in the dirt. But the failed payment does not just seal Jessica out of her office. It acts as a catalyst for a much larger detonation. When an electronic payment of this magnitude triggers a restriction code, the banking software automatically initiates a deeper audit of the user's liability profile. The financial institution holds the mezzanine loan Jessica fraudulently secured using her parents' home as collateral. The bank is about to cross-reference her defaulted commercial lease against that high-interest private loan. The algorithms are connecting the dots. The system is recognizing the imminent threat to its capital. The digital trap is springing shut on the final asset they possess. The public county records are preparing to update, and the illusion holding my parents' marriage together is about to be stripped away for everyone to see. Financial institutions operate without empathy. They do not care about country club memberships, pristine tennis records, or curated social media profiles. They obey a rigid set of coded algorithms designed solely to protect institutional capital. When the municipal inspectors placed a stop work order on Richard's logistics warehouse, the banking software executed a systemic audit of his entire financial footprint. The audit swept his Social Security number across all affiliated debt. It scanned his personal checking accounts, his exhausted credit cards, and the second mortgage he took out to fund Jessica's wedding. Then the digital sweep encountered the anomaly. It found the high-interest mezzanine loan tied to Elevate Event PR. It found the toxic loan Jessica secured by forging her parents' signatures on the residential asset declarations. Mezzanine loans carry aggressive, unforgiving covenants. They require the primary guarantor to maintain a specific threshold of liquid capital at all times. When the city froze Richard's operating accounts, his liquidity dropped to zero. The private lending firm did not call his house to ask for an explanation. Their software simply triggered an automatic notice of default. The dominoes began to fall, accelerating with ruthless mechanical efficiency. The weekend passes in a tense, suffocating holding pattern. Jessica is locked out of her suite, cut off from the physical evidence of her success. Richard is frantically calling bank executives who refuse to return his voicemails. Susan is likely arranging fresh flowers in her dining room, blissfully ignorant that the ground beneath her expensive rugs has already opened up and swallowed her future. Monday morning arrives. I sit at my desk inside the Cliff House. The sun climbs over the Atlantic, casting long, sharp shadows across the restored floorboards. I log into the county clerk portal. municipal property updates process at midnight, digitizing the actions taken by lenders across the state. I type the address of my childhood home into the search bar. I look for the colonial house sitting on the tree-lined suburban street, the fortress of their arrogance. The place where I was told my reliable nature was a tool to be utilized, not a trait to be respected. The page loads. A new document is attached to the parcel history. It is a lis pendens, a formal notice of pending legal action. The status of the property is highlighted in a stark, glaring red font. Pre-foreclosure. The illusion is officially shattered. A pre-foreclosure filing is public record. It is scraped by automated data brokers and published in local business journals. The women Susan plays tennis with will read about it over their morning coffee. The neighbors will see the distress notices arriving in the mailbox. The private lender has initiated the legal process to strip the home from my parents to satisfy Jessica's fraudulent commercial debt. I close the county portal and consider my father's position. Richard is a man backed into a tight, airless corner. He is facing the collapse of his business, the seizure of his home, and the impending revelation that his golden child committed felony fraud to maintain her aesthetic. He needs immediate cash. He needs retainer fees for bankruptcy attorneys and criminal defense lawyers. His own assets are frozen. The only physical items of value left in the family portfolio are locked behind the deadbolted doors of Suite 200. Jessica's imported Italian desk, the velvet waiting room chairs, the high-end audio recording equipment, the designer staging decor. If Richard can liquidate those assets, he might generate enough temporary capital to hire legal counsel and stall the foreclosure proceedings. But he cannot sell what he cannot access. He needs the landlord to release the property. He needs to negotiate with Coastal Heritage Holdings. Richard knows better than to argue with a property manager. Men like Marcus follow strict protocols and do not possess the authority to release seized collateral. Richard needs to bypass the gatekeepers. He needs to speak directly to the chief executive officer. He believes his decades of corporate experience will allow him to charm bully or bargain with the owner of the LLC. He expects to strike a deal offering the landlord a percentage of the liquidation sale in exchange for opening the glass doors. To execute this plan, he needs a name. Corporate structures are designed to provide anonymity, but experienced businessmen know how to navigate the registry. I track the digital footprints hitting my corporate security firewall. I can see the ping originating from Richard's home IP address. He navigates to the Secretary of State website. He pulls the charter for Coastal Heritage Holdings. The primary page lists a generic corporate law firm in Augusta as the registered agent. Richard ignores this. He needs the managing member declaration. He navigates to the annual report filings. The state requires a nominal processing fee to download the full, unredacted PDF. He pays the fee using a borrowed credit card. The system generates the document. I visualize him sitting in his home office, staring at his glowing monitor. The room is quiet. He scrolls past the boilerplate legal definitions and the operating agreements. He reaches the final page. He focuses on the signature block, searching for the name of the ruthless corporate titan who evicted his daughter and seized her livelihood. The typography is crisp and black against the white digital background. It does not list an out-of-state conglomerate. It does not list a faceless hedge fund manager. The document lists the sole managing member of Coastal Heritage Holdings, Roxana Gray. The empirical truth hits him with the force of a physical blow. The reality he constructed shatters into jagged pieces. The daughter he told to play in the dirt, the woman he dismissed at the country club, the contractor he assumed was begging for approval, is the exact same person holding the keys to his ruin. I am the ghost landlord. I am the owner of the $3 million downtown building. I am the architect of the eviction that forced his financial collapse into the light. He stares at the screen. The cognitive dissonance is paralyzing. The power dynamic of our entire lives has inverted permanently in the span of a single keystroke. He has no leverage. He has no money. He has no authority. But the foreclosure clock is ticking loudly in his ears, and desperation demands action. I lean back in my leather chair and look at the black cell phone resting on my desk. The sun dips lower in the sky, casting the room into deep shadow. I do not turn on the overhead lights. I simply wait. I know he is staring at the 10-digit contact number listed on the LLC registry, fighting through decades of pride, gathering the courage to make the hardest call of his life. The heavy brass clock on my desk ticks with slow, rhythmic precision. The digital numbers glow faintly in the shadowed office. 11:45 at night. The Atlantic Ocean crashes against the rocks below the cliff house, a low, continuous rumble that vibrates through the thick granite foundation. I sit in my leather chair, a drafting lamp illuminating the massive architectural blueprints spread across my desk. I'm calculating the load-bearing capacity for a steel support beam on a new commercial acquisition. My focus is absolute. My breathing is slow. I am existing entirely within the mathematics of construction, a world where the rules are consistent and gravity always governs the outcome. At 11:47, the silence fractures. My dedicated business cell phone lights up the harsh ringing cutting through the ambient noise of the ocean. I do not recognize the incoming 10-digit number. It is an unlisted mobile line, likely a burner phone or a borrowed device. The algorithms froze his primary accounts. It is logical to assume his corporate cell service is suspended due to unpaid invoices. I reach across the blueprints. I pick up the device. The cool metal casing rests against my palm. I swipe the screen to accept the connection. I do not offer a greeting. I bring the receiver to my ear and wait. The line is open. I hear a sharp, ragged inhalation of breath, followed by a heavy exhale. Roxana. The voice belongs to Richard. The tone is unrecognizable. The polished, resonant baritone he used to command the country club dining room is gone. The artificial corporate confidence he deployed when sliding the fake investment binder across the table has evaporated. The voice crackling through the tiny speaker is hollow. It sounds like an empty tin can rattling across asphalt. It is the sound of a man who has looked down into the abyss and realized there is no safety net waiting to catch him. He is the silent enabler. For 28 years, Richard allowed Susan to weaponize her favoritism. He funded the golden child illusion. He wrote the checks that built the hierarchy. And he looked the other way when I was pushed into the dirt. He never raised his voice in anger, but his complicity was far more damaging than Susan's direct insults. Now the architect of his own ruin is finally forced to speak. Please, Richard says. The word cracks in the middle. Do not hang up. I do not disconnect the call. I trace a line on the blueprint with a red drafting pencil. I am listening, I state, keeping my voice clinical and flat. Roxana, they are taking our house. He delivers the sentence without preamble. The desperation strips away all etiquette. The pre-foreclosure filing is no longer a digital secret. It is a tangible nightmare suffocating his reality. I saw the LLC filing online tonight, he continues, the words tumbling out in a rushed, frantic cadence. I pulled the state registry. I saw your name on the managing member declaration. I know you are the owner of Coastal Heritage Holdings. I know you own the downtown building. I know you are the landlord who evicted Jessica. He pauses, waiting for a denial, an explanation, or a gloating confirmation. I offer nothing. I let the silence stretch across the cellular connection, forcing him to sit in the uncomfortable truth of his discovery. Jessica is ruined, Richard whispers, his voice dropping an octave. Her business is gone. My logistics warehouse is padlocked by the city inspectors. The bank froze every operating account tied to my Social Security number. We possess zero liquidity. I cannot hire a lawyer to fight the bank. He draws another ragged breath. The silence from my end of the line forces him to articulate the exact nature of his request. He has to beg the daughter he discarded. I need you to unlock Suite 200, he pleads. I need you to release Jessica's office equipment. If we can liquidate the designer furniture and the audio hardware, we might generate enough cash to to hire bankruptcy counsel. We might stall the foreclosure on the house. You have millions of dollars, Roxana. I saw the property valuations. You do not need her desk. We need it to survive." The audacity of the request is staggering, yet entirely predictable. He still views my success through the lens of their needs. He assumes my wealth exists to subsidize their failures. He wants me to violate my own commercial lease agreement to surrender collateral that legally belongs to my company so he can temporarily bandage a fatal wound. "I need a loan," he adds, his desperation accelerating. "A bridge loan, just to get us through the quarter until I can unlock my accounts. I will pay you interest, whatever rate you want. Please, do not let us suffer this humiliation in public." He is begging me for the exact same mechanism I requested 3 years ago, a bridge loan. The symmetry of the moment is absolute. He is asking for salvation from the woman he told to play in the dirt. He stops talking. The silence hangs between us, thick and suffocating. He realizes the bargaining is failing. He recognizes that I am not reacting to the financial panic. He understands he must offer something deeper, something emotional to break my detachment. He has to offer the truth. "We were wrong," Richard says. His voice trembles. The admission tears out of his throat, raw and unpolished. "We gave her everything because she was supposed to be the successful one. We pushed you away because you did not fit the aesthetic. You worked with your hands, and Susan could not brag about that at the club. But we were wrong. Jessica built nothing. You built an empire. I am sorry, Roxana. I am so sorry." I stop tracing the line on the blueprint. I set the red pencil down. It is the confession I wanted 3 years ago. It is the validation I craved when I was freezing in the gutted Airstream trailer. It is the apology I needed when I was tearing my hands open on rusted nails, wondering why I was never enough. But it arrives too late. An apology born from financial terror is not an apology. It is a negotiation tactic. He is not sorry for how he treated me. He is sorry that his accounts are frozen. He regrets his choices only because the math finally caught up with him. The confession is bankrupt of any real affection. I do not raise my voice. I do not scream. I do not deliver a dramatic monologue detailing my suffering. I deploy the cold, unyielding authority of my profession. "I will not discuss business over the phone at midnight," I tell him. The words are clipped and precise. Richard gasps a sound of profound relief. He mistakes my professional boundary for an opening negotiation. He assumes my refusal to discuss the details over the phone means I am willing to discuss them in person. He thinks the apology worked. "Thank you," he stammers. "Thank you, Roxana. When can I see you? I can drive to your office tomorrow. If you want to talk about loans and collateral, I state you will all come to my house tomorrow. You, Susan, and Jessica." "Yes, absolutely," Richard agrees instantly. "We will be there. Just tell me where." "The Cliff House," I reply. "You know the address." "Noon. Do not be late." I tap the red icon to end the call before he can offer another word of false gratitude. The screen goes dark. The office returns to silence, save for the ticking clock and the crash of the ocean waves. The fake olive branch at the country club failed. The digital skirmishes ended in their ruin. The midnight begging confirmed their desperation. Now the conflict enters its final phase. The architects of my childhood trauma are going to walk through the front doors of my $2 million fortress. They are arriving, expecting a bailout. They anticipate a tense negotiation, perhaps a lecture followed by a check. They do not know I am holding the proof of Jessica's felony fraud. They do not know the trap is fully set and the jaws are about to snap shut. Sunday arrives wrapped in an aggressive, blinding coastal sunlight. The glare reflects off the Atlantic Ocean, piercing the towering windows of the Cliff House. It is a day devoid of shadows, illuminating every crack and crevice. I am awake before dawn, finalizing the architectural schematics on my desk. I do not pace the floor. I do not rehearse a speech in the mirror. I approach the impending confrontation with the exact same clinical precision I apply to a structural demolition. You secure the perimeter, you verify the load-bearing points, and you execute the drop. At 11:45, I walk from my office into the grand foyer. This space is the architectural centerpiece of the estate. The ceilings soar 14 feet high, featuring meticulously restored plaster crown molding that curves above arched doorways. The floor consists of wide plank reclaimed white oak, polished to a dull, expensive sheen. At the far end of the room sits a massive fireplace, carved from a single block of dark Maine marble. It is a room designed to intimidate, built by a 19th century sea captain to visually crush anyone who entered his domain. I do not arrange the room to appear welcoming. I instruct my housekeeping staff to take the day off. I do not brew coffee. I do not set out porcelain cups or silver spoons. The environment remains sterile, vast, and echoing. I walk toward the low, modern glass coffee table positioned strategically in the center of the room. I pull 3 distinct items from a leather folder and arrange them on the glass surface. First, I place the formal notice to quit. The commercial eviction document served to elevate event PR bearing the corporate seal of Coastal Heritage Holdings. Second, I place a freshly printed copy of the Liss pendants, the public pre-foreclosure filing downloaded directly from the county registry detailing the impending bank seizure of Richard and Susan's colonial home. Third, I set down my heavy, vintage brass plumb bob. The metal cone gleams under the sunlight streaming through the windows. It rests exactly in the center of the 2 legal documents anchoring the paper to the glass. I step back and stand beside the marble fireplace. I am wearing dark tailored denim and a simple cashmere sweater. I do not wear the scuffed steel-toed boots today. I do not need a red herring anymore. The trap is sprung. I only need to watch the mechanisms engage. At exactly 11:58, the proximity sensor at my front gate chimes on my cell phone. A vehicle has breached the perimeter. I watch the security monitor mounted near the entryway. A dark sedan, not the white Range Rover, rolls slowly up the long granite driveway. The vehicle parks near the front steps. 3 figures emerge. They walk toward the heavy mahogany front doors with the hesitant, reluctant steps of condemned prisoners marching toward the gallows. The brass knocker strikes the wood a dull, heavy thud, echoing through the foyer. I press the electronic release on the wall panel. The deadbolts slide back with a sharp mechanical click. The heavy doors swing inward. Richard enters first. He looks a decade older than the man who sat across from me at the country club just days ago. His posture sags under an invisible, crushing weight. Susan steps in behind him, clutching a designer handbag against her chest like a shield. She is wearing sunglasses indoors, a transparent attempt to hide the swelling around her eyes. Jessica trails them both, hovering near the threshold. She looks terrified, her gaze darting across the restored plaster and the vast open space, unable to reconcile the magnitude of the estate with the sister she despised. They stand grouped together on the entry rug, dwarfed by the 14-foot ceilings. They do not speak. They are waiting for me to dictate the terms of engagement. I remain stationed by the marble fireplace. I do not offer a greeting. I do not ask them to remove their coats. I gesture toward the glass coffee table resting in the center of the room. "Come here," I instruct, my voice carrying clearly across the quiet expanse. They move forward as a single, anxious unit. Their footsteps echo slightly on the white oak floorboards. They stop on the opposite side of the coffee table, a physical barrier separating my reality from their illusion. "Look down," I command. Richard's gaze drops to the glass surface. Susan lowers her sunglasses slightly. Jessica stares at the paper, her breath catching audibly in her throat. They see the eviction notice bearing my company name. They see the pre-foreclosure filing bearing their home address. They see the brass plumb bob sitting heavy and silent between the 2 documents. "This is what reality looks like," I state, keeping my voice clinical, flat, and devoid of any emotional fluctuation. "For 30 years, you built your family structure on a foundation of lies. You threw money at an illusion and called it success. You looked at my labor and called it dirt. Reality does not care about your country club status. Reality operates on mathematics and gravity. You ignored the math, and now the structure is collapsing. Susan's hands begin to tremble. The sight of the pre-foreclosure document printed in stark black and white strips away the last remnants of her denial. The public humiliation she spent her entire life avoiding is sitting on a coffee table in a house she does not own. She pulls the sunglasses off her face. Her eyes are red, the mascara faintly smudged. She decides to deploy her final desperate tactic. She attempts to weaponize maternal affection. She begins to cry. It is not a silent, dignified weeping. It is a loud, theatrical sob designed to trigger guilt and immediate compliance. "We are your family," Susan cries, her voice echoing shrilly off the high ceilings. "How can you stand there in this mansion, surrounded by all this wealth, and watch us lose everything? How can you be so cold, Roxana? Your father is ruined. Jessica's life is destroyed. They are going to take the house you grew up in. I am your mother. You have millions of dollars. You can fix this with a single phone call, and you are torturing us instead." Her tears flow freely now, genuine terror mixed with manipulative rage. She believes she is delivering a masterful performance. She assumes her emotional outburst will crack my professional detachment. She thinks I am hoarding my wealth out of petty spite, and she demands I perform my duty as the reliable daughter and save them from the consequences of their actions. Richard steps forward, placing a hand on Susan's shoulder, attempting to project a unified front. "Roxana, please," he urges, his voice thick with panic. "The bridge loan, we discussed it on the phone. Release the commercial assets. Let us liquidate the office. Write a check to halt the bank. We will sign whatever repayment terms you demand. Just stop the bleeding." I look at the three of them. They are standing shoulder to shoulder, the architects of their own destruction, demanding a bailout from the scapegoat. They still do not comprehend the severity of their position. They think they are fighting a liquidity crisis. They think a bridge loan will plug the hole in the hull. They do not realize the ship is already resting on the bottom of the ocean. I shift my gaze past my parents. I lock eyes with Jessica. The golden child is not crying. She is rigid, staring at the brass plumb bob on the table. She is waiting for the executioner to drop the blade. She knows the eviction notice and the foreclosure filing are connected, and she knows I possess the missing link. I step away from the marble fireplace. I walk slowly toward the glass table. The physical proximity forces Susan to stop her theatrical sobbing. The room goes dead silent. I look directly into my mother's eyes. Her makeup is streaked, her designer facade crumbling under the weight of her impending bankruptcy. "I am watching you lose everything," I reply, my voice dropping to a low, dangerous register, "because I cannot fix a rotting foundation with a bridge loan, and you are blaming the wrong daughter for the collapse." Susan frowns, confusion cutting through her panic. "What are you talking about? Your father's warehouse was targeted by the city. The bank froze his accounts. It is a cascade failure." I pick up the pre-foreclosure document from the glass table. I hold the paper out, offering it to Richard. "Did you read the filing, Richard?" I ask, my tone sharp, demanding his compliance. "Did you look past the default notice and read the name of the primary lien holder, triggering the foreclosure on your colonial home?" Richard hesitates, his hand shaking as he takes the paper from my fingers. He squints at the legal text. He reads the name of the financial institution. It is not the bank holding his original first mortgage. It is the name of a private, high-interest mezzanine lending firm. He shakes his head, uncomprehending. "I do not know this company," he mutters. "I do not have a loan with this firm. Why are they filing against my house?" I point a finger across the table, aiming it directly at the golden child. "Ask Jessica," I command. Richard and Susan turn their heads simultaneously. They look at their favorite daughter. Jessica shrinks backward, her shoulders hitting the heavy oak panels of the front door. There is nowhere left to run. The digital secrets are dragged into the sunlight, and the final illusion is about to be violently torn away. The grand foyer goes entirely still. The only sound remaining in the vast room is the erratic, shallow breathing of my sister. She stands pinned against the heavy mahogany front doors. Her camel hair coat looks suddenly too large for her frame. She shrinks under the weight of the collective gaze now locked onto her. Richard holds the legal document suspended in the air. The crisp white paper trembles in his grip. His eyes dart from the printed text to Jessica, attempting to bridge the canyon between the daughter he worshipped and the evidence he holds. "What did you do?" he asks. His voice does not boom. It barely registers above a whisper. It is the hollow sound of a man standing on the edge of a cliff, feeling the rock crumble beneath his boots. Jessica opens her mouth to speak, but her throat seals shut. A single, panicked sob escapes her lips. She shakes her head rapidly from side to side, a futile physical denial of an undeniable ledger. I do not let her hide behind her tears. I step into the silence, assuming the role of the forensic accountant detailing a crime scene. She needed operating capital, I state, maintaining a slow, measured cadence. Her public relations agency was failing. She exhausted her traditional lines of credit. Standard financial institutions require solvent balance sheets and verifiable revenue to issue commercial loans. She possessed neither. Private mezzanine lenders operate on a different metric. They do not care about revenue projections. They only care about hard, tangible collateral. Richard lowers the paper. His face turns the color of ash. She pledged your residential property, I continue, ensuring every word lands with surgical precision. She signed your names on the asset declaration forms. She leveraged the equity you built over 30 years. She handed the deed to your house to a predatory lending firm to pay for velvet waiting room chairs and a high-end espresso machine. She forged your signatures to fund her illusion. The golden child bankrupted you. The document slips from Richard's fingers. It flutters through the air, landing softly on the white oak floorboards. He looks at his favorite daughter. For his entire adult life, Richard built his identity around the concept of provision. He viewed himself as the benevolent patriarch dispensing wealth to secure his legacy. He wrote the checks, he bought the destination weddings, he funded the aesthetic. Now he realizes he was never the provider. He was the prey. The investment he favored most just executed a lethal extraction of his remaining wealth. Susan stops crying. The transformation is terrifying and instantaneous. The theatrical, manipulative tears she deployed mere minutes ago vanish. Her posture stiffens. The red flush of panic drains from her cheeks, replaced by a cold, calculating pallor. A narcissist relies on a golden child to act as an extension of her own ego. Jessica was the trophy Susan displayed to the country club. Jessica was the proof of Susan's superior parenting. But a narcissist possesses zero loyalty when the trophy shatters. The moment the golden child becomes a liability, the pedestal turns into an altar of sacrifice. "You forged our signatures," Susan asks. The question slices through the room like a scalpel. "Mom, please," Jessica begs, holding her hands up in a gesture of surrender. "I was going to pay it back. I had a massive international client lined up. I just needed a bridge to the next quarter. I needed time. I could not let the agency fail. You told everyone I was a chief executive. I had to keep up appearances." The defense is pathetic, yet profoundly revealing. She committed felony fraud to maintain the fiction her mother demanded. She stole their home to keep Susan's country club narrative intact. "You stole our house," Richard whispers, the reality finally bypassing his shock. "You collateralized the roof over our heads." "I did not have a choice," Jessica cries, sliding down the heavy wood of the door until she hits the floor. She pulls her knees to her chest, sobbing into her hands. The hierarchy of my childhood disintegrates right in front of me. The family structure I endured for 28 years breaks down into its base components: fear, greed, and self-preservation. Susan turns away from Jessica. She literally turns her back on the weeping woman on the floor. She faces me. Her eyes scan the soaring 14-foot ceilings, the restored plaster, the expensive white oak floorboards. She looks at the brass plumb bob resting on the glass coffee table. Her survival instincts recalibrate the power dynamic. She recognizes that Jessica is a dead end. Jessica holds nothing but criminal liability and toxic debt. Susan pivots to the only remaining source of salvation in the room. She pivots to the scapegoat. Roxana, Susan says, stepping closer to the glass table. Her voice shifts. She discards the maternal guilt trip and adopts the tone of a pragmatic business negotiator. We did not know. You have to believe us. We had no idea she committed this crime. I look at my mother. I do not nod. I do not offer absolution. We are the victims here, Susan continues, gesturing toward the fallen foreclosure notice. She defrauded us. But you can fix this. You own Coastal Heritage Holdings. You generate tens of thousands of dollars every month. You can wire the funds to this private lender and clear the lien on our house. She reaches out, placing her manicured hands flat on the glass table, leaning toward me. We will cut her off, Susan promises, her voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper. We will wash our hands of her. She is a criminal. We will sign the colonial house over to you. We will transfer the deed into your corporate portfolio. You can own the property. Just pay off the mezzanine loan so we do not suffer the humiliation of a public bank seizure. Please, you are the successful daughter now. I stare into Susan's eyes. The depth of the betrayal is breathtaking. She is offering to disown her favorite child in exchange for a bailout. She is attempting to trade her loyalty for my capital. She assumes my ultimate goal in life is to finally win her approval to ascend to the top of her twisted hierarchy. She believes I engineered this entire confrontation just to hear her call me the successful daughter. She thinks I want the crown she just snatched off Jessica's head. I do not want her crown. Her kingdom is built on dirt, and I am the one who builds on solid granite. I look at Richard, who is staring at me with hollow, desperate hope. I look at Jessica, weeping on the floorboards, abandoned by the parents she bankrupted herself to impress. I look back at my mother. I step forward, closing the distance, until I am standing just inches away from the edge of the glass table. I maintain a perfectly steady gaze. I do not raise my voice. I do not project anger. I project the cold, unyielding finality of a steel vault slamming shut. Earlier, you asked me how I could stand in this mansion and watch you lose everything. I say. Susan nods eagerly, anticipating the rescue. I am watching it happen, I reply, because you built your house on a lie. You spent 30 years prioritizing an aesthetic over reality. You rewarded a parasite, and you punished the person who actually did the work. Susan's eager expression falters. A flicker of uncertainty breaches her eyes. You offered to give me the deed to your house, I continue. I do not want your house. The foundation is rotting. I do not want your approval. It has zero market value. You are standing in my foyer begging for the exact same grace you denied me when I asked for a fraction of this help. I pause. I let the silence stretch, ensuring the air in the room is perfectly still. I prepare to deliver the final lethal blow. I reach into the past and retrieve the exact weapon she used to sever our relationship 3 years ago. I grip the handle and I drive it straight through the center of her delusion. I invest in success. I state, articulating every syllable with crystalline precision. You play in illusions, and you do not deserve any help. The words detonate inside the grand foyer. Susan physically recoils. She stumbles backward a half step, her hand flying up to cover her mouth. The blood drains from her face, leaving her skin a chalky, translucent white. She recognizes the sentence. She hears the echo of her own voice from the country club dining room, returning to seal her fate. Richard closes his eyes. He bows his head, accepting the verdict. He knows there is no appeal. The ledger is closed. I reach down and pick up my heavy, brass plumb bob from the glass table. I weigh the metal cone in my palm. The walls of my life are perfectly straight. Get out of my house, I command. The silence in the grand foyer possesses a distinct, measurable weight. It is the texture of finality. The echo of my voice fades into the high plaster ceilings, leaving behind a stillness that suffocates any remaining delusion. There is no negotiation. I do not offer a path to redemption. I do not present a payment plan. I stand beside the glass coffee table, holding the vintage brass cone in my palm, and I watch the architects of my childhood trauma process their eviction from my life. My parents do not argue. My mother does not launch another theatrical plea. When a narcissist realizes the audience is immune to the performance, the theater shuts down. Susan stares at the white oak floorboards, her shoulders slumping inward. The aristocratic posture she cultivated for decades dissolves in an instant. Richard reaches down, his movements slow and agonizing, mirroring the physical deterioration of a man who just lost his entire identity. He grabs Jessica by the upper arm. He pulls her off the floor. I ask them to leave, and they do. They retreat without a single backward glance. The sound of their footsteps crossing the expensive rug is uneven and broken. They walk through the arched doorway, stepping out into the blinding coastal sunlight. They look small, fragile, and entirely ordinary. I press the electronic panel on the wall. The heavy mahogany doors swing shut on their motorized hinges. The deadbolts engage with a sharp mechanical click. The lock seals the perimeter. I walk to the front window. I observe the dark sedan navigating the winding granite driveway. The vehicle merges onto the coastal road and disappears around the bend. They shrink back into their car, carrying the crushing realization that the boundaries I drew today are permanent. The estate returns to its natural state of quiet operation. I do not feel a hollow sense of regret. I feel the clean, sterile satisfaction of a balanced ledger. Over the next 6 months, the natural consequences play out with ruthless efficiency. I do not actively seek updates on their collapse. I do not monitor their social media profiles or reach out to mutual acquaintances for gossip. The arithmetic of their ruin exists in public records, and the local business journals publish the results. When you strip away the protective layer of unearned cash, the structural mechanisms of insolvency execute their own justice. I simply focus my attention on Coastal Heritage Holdings. The legal countdown for Suite 200 expires. A commercial liquidator clears out the remnants of Elevate Event Public Relations. The velvet waiting room, chairs, the podcast microphones, and the imported Italian desk are auctioned to satisfy the $24,000 commercial debt. Jessica's carefully curated aesthetic is boxed up and sold for pennies on the dollar to bargain hunters. I renovate the suite and sign a 5-year lease with a stable, high-earning architectural firm. The private lending firm moves swiftly against my parents. The pre-foreclosure notice matures into a formal seizure. Richard and Susan are evicted from the colonial home they occupied for 30 years. The bank takes possession of the property, changing the locks and winterizing the plumbing. Without the logistics warehouse generating income, Richard cannot afford to fight the legal battle in court. The city municipal code enforcements bury his commercial entity in fines, forcing a structural liquidation. He loses the business he spent his life building. The resulting financial crater forces my parents into a harsh new geography. They move into a cramped 2-bedroom rental apartment in a dense suburban complex far from the coast. The unit features thin walls, linoleum flooring, and a view of a shared asphalt parking lot. The country club revokes their membership due to unpaid dues. Susan loses her tennis partners. She loses her formal dining room. Most importantly, she loses her audience. A woman who defines her worth by the envy of her peers is now forced to live in obscurity. She must listen to the sound of her neighbors starting their cars through the uninsulated walls. She must collect her mail from a communal bank of metal boxes. She must navigate a life devoid of luxury, trapped in a quiet, suffocating prison built entirely by her own choices. Richard takes a job managing a small shipping depot, earning an hourly wage, reporting to a supervisor half his age. Jessica faces the steepest descent. The mezzanine lender uncovers the forged signatures on the asset declarations. To spare his favorite daughter from a criminal fraud indictment, Richard liquidates his remaining meager retirement accounts to settle the principal balance, leaving himself and Susan destitute. Jessica avoids a prison sentence, but she cannot avoid the bankruptcy court. A federal judge liquidates her remaining assets and discharges her unpayable debts, leaving a permanent scarlet letter on her financial record. Her credit score evaporates. She can no longer lease luxury vehicles or secure commercial real estate. She must enter the traditional workforce. The local event planning industry is small, and rumors of her insolvency spread quickly. No luxury firm will hire a disgraced former executive. She eventually secures employment as an assistant event coordinator for a mid-tier corporate hospitality company. The woman who wore designer silk blouses and mocked my calloused hands now wears a polyester uniform. She spends her days carrying clipboards, fetching coffee for senior planners, and arranging folding chairs in sterile hotel conference rooms. She wears a plastic name tag. She must smile and apologize to demanding clients. She spends 40 hours a week answering to the exact demographic of people she used to look down on. The golden child is forced to carry the water. Winter arrives on the Maine coast, bringing a fierce, cleansing cold. I stand on the second-story balcony of the Cliff House. The wind bites at my cheeks, carrying the sharp scent of salt and pine. Below me, the freezing, beautiful Atlantic Ocean churns in deep shades of slate and navy. The waves crash against the ancient granite boulders, sending plumes of white spray into the freezing air. The landscape is unforgiving and entirely authentic. I lean against the iron railing, wrapped in a heavy wool coat. I listen to the roar of the tide. I do not look back toward the suburbs. I look out at the horizon. I turn and walk back inside, sliding the glass door shut behind me, sealing out the wind. The temperature inside my home office is warm and regulated. I walk over to my mahogany desk. The dual monitors glow, displaying the updated ledgers for my growing portfolio. Several new historic properties are ready for acquisition. The business is expanding. I reach out and touch the vintage brass plumb bob resting near my keyboard. The heavy metal grounds me. It represents the singular philosophy that carried me from a freezing trailer to a coastal estate. You cannot forge a foundation. You must dig into the dirt, clear the rot, and pour the concrete yourself. The walls of my life are perfectly straight. They are built on solid ground, tested by the elements, and protected by a door they will never walk through again. If this story reminds you that the best revenge is a life well built, hit subscribe. I will see you in the next one. Every family is a house. Some are built on solid granite, anchored deep into the earth by shared struggles, mutual respect, and undeniable truths. Others are built on sand, held together by nothing more than expensive wallpaper and a desperate, unspoken agreement to never look too closely at the leaning walls. When we step back and examine the ruins of Richard and Susan's legacy, we are not just looking at a story of financial ruin or a dramatic real estate eviction. We are looking at a masterclass in catastrophic parenting. We are witnessing the ultimate cost of prioritizing an aesthetic over character, a tragedy that plays out behind the closed doors of affluent American suburbs every single day. In our modern culture, the definition of success has become dangerously distorted. We are bombarded by the pressure to project an image of flawless prosperity. For parents like Richard and Susan, their children were not separate human beings with their own unique struggles and capabilities. They were accessories. They were extensions of the parental ego, trophies meant to be polished and displayed at the country club to validate their own social standing. This is where the concept of family responsibility fractures. True parenting is not about writing a $150,000 check for a destination wedding in Tuscany. It is not about financing an illusion so your neighbors will envy you. That is not love. That is a transaction. When you raise a child like Jessica, the designated golden child, you are not doing her a favor by removing every obstacle from her path. By shielding her from the concept of hard work, by handing her unearned capital, Richard and Susan crippled her. They taught her that her only value lay in how she looked and what she projected. They deprived her of the resilience that can only be forged through failure.
When the money inevitably ran out, Jessica did not know how to roll up her sleeves and salvage her business. She only knew how to maintain the facade. The tragedy of Jessica is that she was not born a criminal. She was molded into one by the unbearable weight of her parents' expectations. She forged those asset declarations and collateralized her childhood home because the terror of disappointing her mother was greater than her fear of federal law. She had zero emotional awareness because she was raised in a home where honest vulnerability was treated as a weakness. On the other side of this toxic coin sits Roxana, the scapegoat, the daughter who was handed nothing but rejection because she chose to play in the dirt. Traditional American family values are supposed to be rooted in fairness, equity, and the celebration of honest labor. Yet so often the child who actually embodies the American ethos of grit and determination is the one pushed to the margins. Roxana was dismissed because her path was not glamorous. Her parents looked at her calloused hands and saw failure, completely missing the profound character it takes to restore a rotting foundation. Raising children with emotional awareness means recognizing their individual strengths, even when those strengths do not align with your personal fantasies. It means looking at a daughter in a dusty hard hat and feeling a surge of pride because she is self-reliant, ethical, and hardworking. Fairness is the bedrock of sibling harmony. When parents blatantly favor one child over another, they do not just ruin their relationship with the neglected child, they plant a slow, ticking bomb in the basement of the entire family structure. They breed a silent, suffocating resentment that will eventually detonate. The irony, of course, is that the dirt Richard and Susan so deeply despised was the only thing capable of saving them. Had they fostered an environment of honesty, Richard could have admitted his logistics business was struggling. He could have sat his family down at the dinner table and explained the reality of their financial downswing. Had they prioritized emotional integrity over social status, Jessica could have admitted her public relations firm was failing long before she resorted to felony fraud. But in a household where love is conditional upon success, telling the truth becomes an impossible risk. The facade must be maintained at all costs, even if the cost is the roof over your head. What Roxana's journey teaches us is that true wealth is not inherited, it is constructed. She survived the brutal silence of her family's rejection by leaning into the empirical, undeniable truth of her labor. She used the brass plumb bob as her guide, ensuring her life was perfectly straight, while her parents drowned in their own crooked geometry. She did not seek revenge through malice or illegal maneuvering. She simply established an impenetrable boundary and allowed gravity to do its work. She stepped out of the way and let the natural consequences of their deceit catch up to them. That is the ultimate display of emotional maturity. You cannot save people who are committed to their own illusions, and you are not obligated to set yourself on fire just to keep your toxic family members warm. If you are listening to this and recognizing the ghosts of your own childhood, if you have ever been the one left out in the cold while the golden child was handed the keys to a kingdom they didn't earn, you are not alone. There is a profound, quiet strength in walking away from a rigged game and building your own table. If Roxana's story resonated with the scars you carry, I invite you to subscribe and follow Olivia Stories Revenge. We explore the deep, hidden dynamics of impossible families and the quiet power of those who finally decide to walk away. Drop a comment and share your own experiences. This community understands the weight of those unspoken truths. As we look back at the coastal estate, the ruined public relations firm, and the foreclosed suburban home, a lingering question remains. It is a question that applies to the houses we all live in, both the physical ones and the emotional ones. Think about the foundation you are standing on right now. Think about the relationships that anchor your life, the expectations you place on your children, and the truths you might be hiding from yourself to keep the peace. Are the walls of your life genuinely straight, held together by honesty, fairness, and mutual respect? Or are you simply hanging expensive wallpaper over a widening crack, hoping the timber holds for just one more season? When the storm finally hits the coast, and the storm always hits the aesthetic, will wash away. The only thing left standing will be the truth. And when you look out the window at the freezing, beautiful ocean, you must ask yourself, who did you lock inside your fortress, and who did you leave out in the cold?